Hello folks, Dynodon back here today, and we're going to do another tech tip on oil leaks, finding oil leaks. Now, one of the advantages that we have here on the dyno is that we can build the motors, we stick all the motors on the dyno, and not only can we get them all tuned up and running great for the customer, but if there's a problem, we can usually find it here on the dyno first. One of the biggest issues that most people will have when they're putting a brand new motor together is sometimes there's going to be oil leaks. Everybody gets them. And it's a matter of trying to find them and fix them before the motor goes in the car. Those of you who don't have the privilege of using a dyno before you get the engine into a car, you can take this tip that will really help you out a lot while you're building the engine, after you build the engine, and right before you stick it in the car. You will actually be able to check the engine for leaks, and this is how I do it here on the dyno. What I normally do is I want to seal the crankcase off and pressurize it. That's the basic thing that we're doing. So what I've done here on this particular Ford is I've sealed off both. This is the breather on this side over here. The other side here, there's a PCV valve, and I've blocked that all off. So that's the only other opening to the crankcase is right here in the front, where the dipstick tube went. So as you can see, I've jury-rigged a little system here to be able to hook my leak down gauge up to the engine. And I want to do this because I need my hands to be free when I'm checking everything. So what I'll do is I'll set my leak down gauge to about 40 PSI. Now, most of you are thinking, do I want to put 40 PSI inside the engine? Well, no, 40 PSI will blow all the seals out. But when you set the leak down gauge for 40 PSI, because of all the internal leaks of the engine going past the rings and so forth, you're never going to see that much pressure inside the engine. So right now I'm at like 42 pounds. I plug my gauge in, and now I'm pressurizing the crankcase. And my gauge only says about 5 or 6 PSI. And that's enough to find most of the leaks. So I'm going to switch the camera around here and start over again. Okay, so now I'm back towards the back end of the engine, as you can see, and this is a Ford, and most Ford crankshafts, you will notice, the bolt holes for the crankshaft go all the way through. So that is a potential leak, but I've already had this on and off the dyno once, and I thought maybe my rear leak, that's what I'm searching for in this particular engine, my rear leak was coming from those bolt holes. So I've actually taken the bolts out, put the flywheel back on after I've sealed the bolts up and ran it again, and it's still leaking. So what we normally do here is you need to get yourself a real cheap bottle of water and soap. That's all this is water and soap. And if you go around all the spots that you think might be leaking, the pan seal, the lip seal for the crankshaft, you can see that if there's a leak, you'll be able to see it. It'll bubble up. Same thing with the intake manifold. You can go all the way around the motor when it's on the stand at home and check for leaks before you actually stick it in the car. This particular engine is kind of an anomaly, and the reason I say that is because this is a Ford with a one-piece rear main seal. Normally, the one-piece rear main seal never leaks. But this is the second time I've had it off the dyno, and I can't find, with the spray bottle, I cannot find any other leaks in the back. And the only time this engine leaks is when I rev it up. I ran it for 20 or 30 minutes at 3,000 RPM. There wasn't a drop come out of it until I revved it up. So what I'm going to do now, and I'll come back later and let you guys know what it is. I believe what happened is when this seal went in, there's a spring on the seal itself that helps clamp it to the crankshaft. And I think that spring's fallen off, and I believe that's one of the reasons why this one's leaking. I'll get back to you after we tear it apart and find out. Thanks. Okay guys, so we're back here on the dyno. I got the engine installed back on the dyno this morning. Yesterday I had it off, took it down to the assembly room, and we took the oil pan off and the main cap off to get to the rear main seal. And every one of us in the shop took a look at this to try to figure out exactly what our problem was. Yesterday I talked about the spring that goes behind on the lip of the rear main seal, and that tightens the seal up onto the crankshaft and just makes it a little snugger on the crankshaft. Yesterday I thought maybe that was the case, that was the reason why it was leaking. I was wrong. That wasn't it. So what we did is we changed manufacturers on the seal, and I'm not gonna say which one it was. We ended up putting a Felpro seal in, and we just paid really close attention to what we were doing and putting it back together. So this morning I stuck it back on the dyno, got it warmed up, revved it up, and it's not leaking. So the problem's solved. But the point is that if you were to have to go through this in the car, it would have been a nightmare. It would have been a 1 or 2 week thing, pulling it out, go through, trying to figure out what was wrong. We were able to solve this problem in about 24 hours. So that's one of the advantages of going to the dyno if you can, and also too, one of the advantages of checking for leaks, like I showed yesterday with the spray bottle, before you actually stick it in the car. If you can't, go to the dyno, and that really that'll really save you some time. So now that we're rolling, I'm going to actually stick the microphone down, run outside, start this thing up, make a quick pass for you guys, and then we'll go on about our day. Hold on a second.